created this rule? Who said that this is the framework for science and research? There's a history to that, and I have mentioned that in the book. This process of scientific research that we so adhere to today was made with the idea of development that is based on destroying nature. So there is an essay written by Jayant Kalavarji which elaborates on that and says how in the time of King Charles, somewhere in the 1600s, they set up the Royal Society of London. Robert Boyle was the head of it, and he decided that we have to exploit nature for development. But in order to do that, you have to first silence these traditional practitioners and these healers who go on about nature and natural cycles. You have to first silence them because they don't let you exploit nature. So then all of that traditional knowledge, they labeled it as pseudoscience. And Robert Boyle, being a wealthy fellow, he set up a very expensive lab in his wealthy home and invited his peers who could also afford similar laboratories and experiments. And only that's when the peer-reviewed research that we talk about came into being. Even today, with all the studies that I have done on this subject, I know that I cannot publish it in any damn journal. No one will accept it or admit it, because the number one problem with medical research today is that it has no replicability. I'm not saying this. Dr. Subhash Kak, I'm sure everyone knows Dr. Subhash Kak. He reached out to me and shared with me certain articles, and he himself has written about this in Medium, about why modern science and research based on modern science, more than 80% of it, they could not replicate. So there was this biotechnology company who took 53 of the most landmark studies on cancer and tried to replicate it. You know how many gave the same results? Only 11. Only 11, and these are landmark studies. So the thing that we are calling as scientific review is itself highly questionable. This is the first and foremost thing. I want all of you to do your study on this. Look up the papers, read the articles of Dr. Subhash Kak. Why is this not replicable? Because first and foremost, most of it, the outcome is pre-decided. Now, if I submit a paper which shows that Indian women, especially rural and tribal, have lesser health problems, no one's going to publish it. Because you are funded to present a certain perspective, and your professors and the people who are funding will tell you somehow alter the numbers so that you arrive at this. Anyone who's into research knows this. There's a wonderful talk by Sarika ji in Sangam Talks itself about research, and I know her and I have discussed this with her extensively. Please watch that to know why the thing that we call research today is the most unreliable source of proof. Having said that, how do we establish proof of knowledge for Indian systems? If you are looking at Ayurveda, Tantra, or any of these systems, we have our Indian methods of pramana, of proofs of knowledge, which the texts called the darshanas talk about. So we have 3 or 4 types of pramana. We have pratyaksha pramana, that is direct experience through your senses. First and foremost thing, all the rural women and their experiences, the experience of devotees who go to temple, we dismiss it because, where are the studies? Ask all of them. They've had a pratyaksha pramana, and that is why they know it. Indian sciences accept pratyaksha pramana. Then we have anumana, inference. Then we have upamana, you can know by comparison. And if all of these things don't happen, you know by aptavachana, testimony of a reliable source, which is usually the Shastras or the Vedas. Charaka introduced another method and called it yukti, which I spoke about, rational. So we have to start looking at our own frameworks for understanding our sciences. Sure, you can go ahead and do research through the modern methods, but so much of it is biased that by the time you put the checks and balances in place to avoid the biases, no one's going to fund that work for you. Okay, so, and this I know from, I'm part of the ethics committee in a very reputed institute in Bangalore, and I know what happens and how we do the reviews. When there is a proposal that comes which is about yoga, everyone's like, yeah, whatever. But it's about something based in modern science and very complex, and there's so much involvement. But suddenly there are questions about yoga which is so safe. So there's a lot more that we need to understand about research, and honestly, I do not think that modern research and their stand is anything, any sort of approval for us to understand Indian sciences. Indian sciences have their own methods of validation, and we need to come out with that and make that official. What was your second question?